In this video, we're going to talk about the new brass sleeve 540, which is primarily used for medical cylinder filling.
Yeah, this connector's material construction are primarily brass and Monel for the wetted parts. The soft goods, the seals, are made of FKM or Viton, and it comes in a few options with the RPV pin. You can get it without an RPV pin, one with a CGA 540R standard RPV pin, and one with a longer pin for some other applications. And you can also get it in two different termination styles. What's shown here is a 90-degree female quarter-inch MPT, and you can also get it in a straight-through male quarter-inch MPT. Works very easily. You just push on and pull off.
In this video, we're going to cover installation, operation, maintenance, and then along the way, we'll cover some tips and tricks.
Installation of the connector is very easy. You just get your high pressure hose and you connect to the termination port. You're going to want to use an approved thread sealant or a thread tape per your company's safety requirements. And you'll also want to make sure that you're using wrench flats, especially on the male version of this, so that you're not spinning the connector or torquing it funny. But in the female version, you can hold onto the connector and use a wrench to tighten up your hose fitting there. You don't want to over tighten. And then a tip would be to make sure you connect with a proper orientation so that you can easily connect to the cylinder. You don't want to cockeyed one way or the other, or use a hose or a swivel fitting, a hose with a swivel fitting.
Now, depending on your application, you want to make sure you're using a long enough hose. Some applications have a horizontal setup like this or a vertical setup, but you want to make sure the hose is long enough because that hose is going to allow for ease of use when connecting and disconnecting. If it's too short, you're never going to be able to get a good connection on the cylinder. And if it's too long, there's excess hose, which then allows the connector to hang loose and potentially bang into like your rack manifold setup that you may have. So you should always make sure you have the correct length of hose. Operation of this connector is real simple, but before we talk about that, we're going to talk quickly about inspection.
Yeah, you want to take a look at the connector, make sure everything's in a good and working order, working condition. You want to kind of test connect and make sure the sleeve moves fully forward, can go on and off very easily. You want to look at the O-ring real close, make sure there's no cuts or chunks taken out of it. You also want to pay close attention to your RPV pin, making sure that it's in the proper state, either in, retracted, or out extended for your application. And if not, you can use a pin tool, push in, turn 90 degrees, and change the status either out or in, depending on what you need to use it for. While it's out, also take a real close look and make sure that pin isn't bent or damaged. And if so, you will need to potentially replace that pin. Other than that, you check all those things, your connector will be good to go, good to use for service.
Another thing we also probably want to inspect is the collets. You want to make sure those collets are also in good shape. Make sure there's no dents or dings, especially around the threads. That could prevent a good safe connection with the connector. And also, obviously, just like the general physical body of the connector, any dings and dents, it is brass, so it's a little bit softer metal, so you want to make sure it's not banged up too much because that could also, inhibit the operation of the connector. Operation of this connector is real straightforward. In the beginning, you just want to make sure that that back sleeve or the main sleeve is all the way back, which allows these collets to be fully open when engaging the valve. You'll obviously want to grip the sleeve with your hand. You don't need to grip it. You can grip it fully with your hand. You don't need to hold it with a couple fingers. It's meant to be gripped fully. And then you want to make sure it's lined up to the valve nice and square, which will allow for full thread engagement when you push the connector onto the valve.
Yeah, and you'll feel the piston of the connector kind of nest nicely inside the valve there, and you'll know you're in the correct orientation. And then you just push with this outer sleeve only, not the body. Use the sleeve. You can use your whole hand, you can use a few fingers, whatever's comfortable for you, and just back on firmly, but you won't have to use any excessive force. It goes on fairly easily. And then, you know, once it's on, it's on. If you do have any problems, there's a potential that the collets have just aligned perfectly where it's kind of peak to peak, and you may want to then rotate your connector or rotate the collets maybe 180 degrees to get those to line up a little bit better, and try your connection again.
Just like that.
It's very easy. And you will see a green ring kind of pop out from underneath the outer sleeve there when you're connected properly. Another thing you'll want to do is make sure that there are no visible threads that you can see that haven't been, you know, encompassed by the connector, so you've got full thread engagement.
Maintenance on the sleeve style connectors is very simple. For the most part, it's going to involve replacing the main seal O-ring on the front of the connector here. To replace it, it's best to use a sharp pick and have a seal pack from FasTest that has the correct seals for your connector. To get at the seal, just get under it with the pick. And in case of an old damaged seal, you can go ahead and poke the seal if you really want to get it out. It's in there pretty good with the groove. They aren't always easy to come out, but you can get them out. So you set that one aside and grab a new seal from your pack and simply just place it on by hand. You won't need a tool for that part. Get it in there, make sure it's fully in the groove, and that's it. Typically recommend replacing these every 3 months or so, or every 1,000 cycles, whichever comes sooner. Another maintenance item on these sleeve style connectors is the piston nut. This piston nut is present whether you have an RPV pin or not. It's on all these connectors, and periodically you're going to want to make sure that this nut is tight and hasn't backed out or loosened. To do that, we've got this torque tool. It's part number G540 RPV-TK, and it's got the correct socket for engaging with the piston nut. Now, on a connector with a female body, 90 degrees, or a male body with an elbow on it, you probably won't need another tool to hold the connector while you do this torque check. But in this case, I've got a straight through male body, so you want to have a tool, a wrench, adjustable wrench, or a 5/8 inch wrench to engage with the flats on the body. So I'll do that here. You'll set your wrench onto the flats and grasp it firmly. Use your torque tool, push on firmly, and you'll hear and feel a click when you have torqued the nut. Do that to all the connectors on your line every once in a while to make sure that everything is tight. Another maintenance item you'll want to check periodically is the function of the RPV pin. The RPV pins for the number 1 style pin on these connectors is retractable, and we have a tool here. This is part number G580 RPV-PT. You'll use this tool. It has a little depression in it on this surface that interacts with the tip of the pin. So in this case, the pin is out, and we want to make sure that it can go in and it's free to move. In some cases, you want to fill certain valves with the pin retracted, non-RPV 540s, etc. So to do that, line up the depression with the pin. You'll feel it engage, push in, and turn 90 degrees. And you'll feel it land in a detent, and now the pin is retracted. It's still sticking out maybe 1/8 inch or so, and that is perfectly normal. And to get it back out, to extend it, you do the same thing. Engage the pin, push in a little bit, and you'll feel the pin extend. If the pin is bent or damaged in any way and does not easily slide up and down, you want to replace the pin and the spring, potentially the nut as well. You can contact FasTest for those kits. Replacing the RPV pin is fairly easy. To do so, you'll want the proper kit from FasTest with the proper pin for your part number shown on the screen. You'll also want the RPV nut tool, torque tool, part number G540 RPV TK. So to do this, again, if you have a female body or a male body with a 90-degree elbow, you'll be able to use just your hand to provide enough torque to remove and replace the nut. But in my case, I've got a male body and I've got not a whole lot to grab onto, so you can use an adjustable wrench or a 5/8 inch open-ended wrench to help you out here. So again, use your tool and you'll want to remove this nut. So back it out. You've got it backed out. And this takes off the piston nut, and the RPV pin came out with it. Usually you'll be able to, if the pin is damaged or bent, you can still take it out of the nut. If it's really bent, it might be locked onto the nut. You might also need a replacement nut as well. There's a spring inside the piston here. This will come in your kit. You'll replace that as well when you replace the pin. To put them back together, use the new parts that you get in your kit. Put the spring down inside the piston. Go ahead and quickly put together your pin and nut. Now I like to put it in the position where it's extended. This keeps you from having to fight the spring as you're installing the nut. You can have it in the extended position. This is kind of how that detent works. But then you're just fighting the spring. So go ahead and put it in the extended position. Start it by hand first. Get it as far as you feel comfortable with. You'll feel it bottom out. It's pretty easy to do by hand, but then you're going to want to go ahead and with the final torque, use your tool like we did before. So in my case, I'm going to use the wrench again, engage the nut, and feel the click, and your replacement is complete.
Full operating instructions and replacement parts are available on our website.
If you have any questions, reach out to FastSales at FastTestinc.com.
Thank you for being a valued FasTest customer.